Hey everybody, Arend Feenstra here. Minyazaboot Arend Feenstra from Countryside Corner, also Countryside Acres. If you are interested in our other channel, it is about farm stuff, family stuff, everyday vlog stuff, right now travel stuff. This channel is more dedicated to interviews and podcasts and question and answers. Today we are interviewing Dan Sandlin. He is a United States citizen who is in the process of fully immigrating here. We'll listen to his stories, ask him basically the same questions we ask most people. His is a little different because he's not completely here yet, I guess. He's still got a foot in both doors. So we're going to talk to him, learn more about him and his past and his desires to move here, and why he's making that move. So I'm very curious to hear what he has to say. I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, please give her a big thumbs up. Just stop it right now and give her a thumbs up. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And just help us grow this channel. I hope it's beneficial to you, to anyone who is considering moving here. I hope you enjoy these interviews. And if you have any other suggestions for future interviews, also drop those down below in the comments or email us. Maybe you have some guests, or maybe you would like to be on the show. Just let us know. Just reach out to us one way or another. All right, let's get into it. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Countryside Corner. Here we're all about faith, family, and freedom. Brought to you from no other than Mother Russia. Let's just get right into it. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing here.
I'm Daniel Sandlin, and I'm from Indiana in the USA, right in the middle. When I talk to most people here, they don't know where that is. I tell them, California is on the left, New York's on the right, and I'm in the middle. Chicago would be the closest biggest city. I'm from the Indianapolis, which is the capital, right in the middle, 3 hours south of Chicago. Born and raised there. Really never left the U.S. other than Canada, Toronto, that kind of thing, and Mexico. Never really traveled anywhere. And most people are surprised to know that I would say, I don't know the percent, but over half of Americans don't even have a passport. I mean, usually we don't travel.
Yeah.
We don't really travel very far, and I didn't have one either until I was ready to travel. I'm a father. I have 3 children. My oldest is 24. Then my next one is 22, girls, 22, and then my son is going to turn 20 here in next month. My oldest graduated from university. She's out in the world, got her own place, working, and my middle one in the States. Everybody, yeah, they're all in the States. Yep. And I'll start off with saying this: my Russian connection is my wife. She's Russian, but she's my second wife. So my children from my previous wife, and my middle child graduates next week from Purdue University, and then my youngest, he's got 2 more years of university left. And my wife has one son, and he's 33. So I'm a little older than you and some of your crowd. And that's kind of what makes my story probably a little different as well. I by trade, I'm an attorney. I went to law school in Ohio. I have my own law firm. I was a deputy prosecuting attorney for a while. And then I opened up my law firm 20 years ago. I concentrate in real estate. Landlord tenant is my specialty. And then the evil debt collector. I also have a debt collection practice. And that also makes me a different attorney because my law.
You're like you're like that tax collector in the Bible nobody likes, eh? So
exactly, you're exactly right. I believe Jesus came up on the steps and threw everything off. Yeah, that's me. And in fact, it's funny when I don't want to say I'm overly religious, but I'm Orthodox. And it's funny whenever we say the Lord's Prayer when they say forgive our debtors, and I always have to say, I can't forget all of the debtors, but
some anyways, of them,
yeah. So not my clients' debtors, just mine. No, so
when I read that, that's what made me think. I think we can go in a different direction here, considering the economic issues faced in the West. Maybe we'll touch on that some later. But you're dealing right with it. You see it firsthand. So in real estate and in debt collection. So
yeah, but my debt collection is with auto debt. I have small bank, doctors, dentists. Pretty much you name it.
Okay.
I do. Not a lot of individuals, but I do some individuals as well. So my firm's a little different, but I started with just me, one employee in one room with 2 desks, a copy machine, a file cabinet, and a trash can. And I worked out of my basement for a while. Then I bought a farm, which we could talk about, a small hobby farm. And I moved, it sounds really weird, but I had my law office in my garage. And then I started growing and having more and more employees and then attorneys. So then I bought a place, rented, and then purchased a place. And I've just been growing ever since. Now we have 6 attorneys and 7 support staff. And
Wow, decent size.
It's pretty good. It's still small, not quite mid-sized, but we're getting there. And we took on one attorney who retired. We purchased his practice, and that kind of helped us grow. He does a lot of auto collections, and it's what we call a high volume practice. It's not like what most people are used to. It's not like we get one case and it takes us 2 years to come to some finale. It doesn't take a lot of work. Our cases are very high volume. I mean, it's basically just a machine. Most of it's small claims court. File the paperwork. We'll show up a couple weeks later. We have our 20-minute spiel in front of the judge, and we move on. But we do hundreds. We do about 600 evictions a month. We do probably 400 new lawsuits a month. Yeah, it's quite a bit. Now that sounds worse than what it is. I'm the second largest firm in my state, and we probably represent, I would say 70, 80,000 units. So my clients together have about 70 or 80,000 tenants. So the number of evictions we do is really 1%. So it's like I said, it sounds worse than it is, but about 1%, maybe 2%.
That's true. Fair enough.
And then out of that, 1 to 2%.
Sorry to cut you off. You've been doing that specifically for 20 years?
Yep.
And have you seen, obviously your firm's growing as well, so you're going to see more clients, but have you seen any kind of a rise in the last 5-10 years? Mind you, the economic crisis has been going for almost 20 years now anyway, but.
Exactly. So my answer would be no, I really haven't. And despite what you hear, there's actually some federal agencies that's supported by, I would say, I don't want to say the liberals in a negative term, but President Biden even campaigned on trying to help reduce the number of evictions and all of these things. And no, the number has actually gone down. The number has gone down for a lot of reasons, but mainly because the government has really tried to step in and make them more difficult across the country. And they've been trying for
difficult
years.
To kick someone out.
Yes. Slow it down, make you do requirements beforehand, make you go to mediation, all these kind of things. California would be your biggest example. And they've been trying this for years. And it's in the US, the good thing about the US, and a lot of people don't quite understand, is, we have our own state laws, we have our federal law, but we have our state laws, we have our own state constitution. So just because the country may seem a little liberal, it doesn't mean each state is liberal. And some states are more conservative than others. And then you get some cities that are more liberal, have more restrictions than the rest of the state. Like New York, the state of New York isn't that conservative, but of course New York City is. So they've been making it much more difficult. And their goal, and the reason is because they believe, and Biden even believes it, that a home is a right. They believe that it's a right for you to have a place to live. And that may be true or not, but it doesn't mean that my clients have to provide it for you. And that's kind of the mentality, is they think that we have some.
Just because you haven't seen evictions go up doesn't mean that it's not that the economic situation hasn't worsened. It's just gotten a lot harder to kick people out too. Then.
Yes, but I will acknowledge that the increase in rent is out of proportion to the increase in pay. So there is there's definitely a problem, even in my conservative state, that the rent is too high. And it could be a whole nother hour on telling you on why that is. There's a lot of reasons why, and I probably am privy to what most people are not as to why. It's the same for houses as it is apartments. When everyone tries to sell their property for as much as possible, when you go to sell it the next time, you got to sell it for more, or at least the same what you paid for, right? So, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes with banking and investment portfolios that are driving up this price artificially, I believe. And some of these apartments in my state, I don't know how they profit, and the amount of money that they're buying. And a lot of them are hedge funds that are buying a lot of these apartments, and they have profit margins that they have to make. And so the price is going up too high, too fast.
What's average rent there for a 2-bedroom apartment?
$1,000 to $1,200.
Okay, US dollars, of course. Okay. And then the average mid-sized home price.
Cool. Outside of the city, in the suburbs, it's quite high. I just had this conversation with my daughter who's graduating, and she's kind of depressed. I said, "Aren't you excited?" She's going to have a really good job, pays like 65,000 US dollars, but that is not enough to buy an average home price.
No.
The average home price, if you buy a really small starter home in the suburbs, it's about 300 to 350,000, and that's a lot of money. The average home price is about 450,000, and at
Crazy.
60s, believe it or not, 60 or 65,000, and a lot of Russians are like flabbergasted when they hear that amount of money. But
Yep.
when you get to the disposable income at the end of the month, quite often Russians, at least in Moscow and St. Petersburg, have more.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I literally had that discussion today with a guy because they got another string of holidays here again. I'm like, man, you guys are always on holidays. And he's like, oh, what are you talking about? I said, so we don't have that. A Canadian would go broke with this kind of holidays. We have to work that many hours in order to maintain that status quo. We were relatively debt free when we left, so that helps. But for most people, if you want to buy a home, I mean, you're strapped in debt. You have to work.
Oh, and student loans are crazy. And that's a whole nother thing. I don't know if you ever listened to it. Is it Michael Rogue? Is that his name? Mike Rogue. He's a famous American that he's a commentator, has television shows, and he's going through I think it's called America's Hardest Job, and he goes through and interviews people.
Yep.
Like at a pig farm, stuff like that. And he's actually got like a tour where he's talking about how college isn't what it used to be. The cost of college and the income you get just isn't what it used to be. But yes, in my kids, of course, my ex-wife and I, we said, we don't care. You're going to go to college. We're from that old school of go to school no matter what. But they have some that didn't go to school that are already making more money than they're going to make.
I actually encourage my kids not to, depending on what they want to be. If it's something specific, obviously certain things you need, of course, or need an education for. But the old idea that you need to go to college or university to make more money isn't true. When I was going through high school, they were pushing us all for computers degrees. And I was sitting there thinking, I actually said to the guidance counselor, well, who's going to swing the hammer and milk the cow? And they're like, what? But now in the trades, at least in Canada, I mean, you can easily make 40, 50 bucks an hour swinging a hammer, no education needed. Well, you're still an education, but not one that you're paying 50, 60,000 for, right? So
usually that you can work and get it for free or a very small amount.
Yeah, you're getting paid to learn basically, and then they'll send you off for trade school maybe for a few months or something, but on the job training, right? So
welding is like one of the highest paid tradesmen you can get out there. I mean, it's really good.
Especially if you're doing like oil field pipe welding or something like that. There's a lot of money in that. Yeah. Well, so you got guys making huge. You can make 50, 60 grand at 18 years old if you apply yourself and stay out of drinking and stuff. So.
Yeah, my stepfather, my wife's husband, my mother's husband, he retired as a diesel mechanic. Oh, he was making six figures for most of his career, but that's hard work. But yeah, my daughter, just to tell you, my daughter has, I don't know if you've ever heard of Purdue University, but Purdue University in Indiana is one of the largest agricultural colleges. It's like in the top 5 ag and I don't know why, but space as well. It's where a lot of astronauts go as well. But my daughter's degree is agricultural business. And so she's looking into working for not necessarily farms, but some product related. She wants to do some kind of advertising or something with farm products. So my state's big in that. My state's actually pretty popular for seeds. We have several seed production corporate headquarters in our state. But yeah, you're right. And if you haven't watched any of Mike Rogue, you should do it. He's 100% agrees with what you just said. College is good if you want to be an accountant or something, but if you're looking to make money, it's actually not the best road to go. For me, going to undergrad and then going to law school, I worked. It took me 5.5 years during my undergrad to get my degree. I worked full time. And then I went to law school and went the evening program and worked full time. And it took me 4 years to get that degree. Normally it takes 3. And then my first job out of law school as a deputy prosecutor, I made less than the first job out of high school. My first job out of high school, I was delivering newspapers of all things, which, my kids don't even know what that's like. But I delivered newspapers to the grocery stores, the gas stations, did that. And I made more money. So yeah.
And it's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do like brain surgery or something, I'm not letting you work on me with unless you got some kind of a degree. But in my line of work in carpentry and in farming, I don't care if you have a degree. I want to know that you know how to work. I'd rather see your hands and feel your handshake and see if there's actually some strength to that than seeing a paper on a wall. I couldn't care less. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you would halfway like my handshake. It would be fine with the strength of my handshake, but you would not be impressed with how smooth my skin is. I'm the opposite of you. I am not good with my hands. I hire people. I'm not good at it. Every time I cut
Well,
something, it doesn't matter. It's crooked when I'm done.
I'm pretty embarrassed on the lack of calluses I got now. I've had a year of no working, so
Yeah, it's going to be a big change for you. You've probably sat on your behind more than you have in your entire life.
I
would
think
guess.
so. Yes, it's been terrible. I'm looking for the whole families. We're just going nuts here in town. We got nothing to well, not nothing to do. There's stuff to do, but not what we normally do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to building a house and a shop and getting going. Yeah, get some cows.
Yeah, you're a little more like my wife, and we have a place in Moscow, an apartment in Moscow on the north side, and then we also have a house in Lipetsk we're building to make a little farm, just like we have in the U.S. And when my wife comes, since we have a small farm in the U.S., it's odd, but we don't get to travel together a lot. Someone has to stay home with the animals, and you can only bug your friends and family for so long. So, and I'm here much more often. And when she comes to the apartment, she has about 4 days and she's done. She cannot be in the apartment more than 4 days. She literally starts to pace in the kitchen. And I'm like, she goes, I don't know how you can stand to be here. I said, it's Moscow. You can do everything. She goes, there's nothing to do here. I'm leaving. And she'll go to the farm and she goes, I'll sleep. I don't care if it's not ready. I got to have something to do. And she's just always,
and I can relate to that. The amount of people that don't understand us is like, well, why aren't you going to move into the village? She says, no, there's nothing to do there. I want a piece of land. I want my own land. And I just, I can get up at 5 a.m. if I want to and go to the barn and do something, here. Yeah, so there is lots to do. You can do stuff in the city, but it's just not the kind of things that we typically would do. Right.
It's the stuff I like to do. It's perfect for me.
I guess, yeah.
But for my and sometimes we battle that even in the U.S. Luckily, I have businesses there that keep me busy. But she's busy at the house on the farm all day long. Chickens, goats. I mean, that's what she likes. She says when she gets sick or doesn't feel well, she goes to the barn with the animals. Half hour, 45 minutes later, she's fine. That's what she
likes to do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move that along then. What are you doing here? Why are you in Russia? I mean, obviously your wife is from the USSR, but
she's from the USSR. However, she's from Moldova. Her father's from Ulyanovsk, which is in the middle of Russia, and then her mother is from Ukraine, Odessa. But she grew up with her sister in Chisinau, Moldova. And when Soviet Union collapsed, and people don't really know a lot about that, and I'm not the biggest history buff, but kind of what's going on with the situation with Ukraine, on a small scale, it happened in Moldova. And they banned Russian. I mean, it was looked down upon to speak Russian, and like overnight, all your documents had to be Moldavian, not Russian. Well, my wife and other people, they couldn't speak Moldavian and they didn't really want to learn. So she fled. So she has somewhere in her family, her grandmother remarried a man. It was a Jewish man. So somewhere in there, they got the Jewish Community Center in Indiana to sponsor to take their entire family out. And some of them went to Israel, some went to Boston, some went to California, and some went to Indiana. So she came over with her mom, her dad, her grandmother, all of her aunts, her sister, their family, and she came with her son. All of them lived in my town in Indiana. So fast forward, she's been there 30 years. Fast forward, we've been blessed that I've got my law firm, and I actually have some real estate business that I've got some passive income that we can retire today. And that's what we're working towards. We've got a few more years to kind of take care of that. And so she wants to retire in Russia. She doesn't want to retire in the US. So that's why. But I'm ahead of the game. I came and visited back in 2014 with her father. He hadn't been back since he left. We came to Moscow, and then we went to Sochi. We went to Ulyanovsk, and he convinced me to go to Yalta, Crimea. And I was very afraid as an American, just 2 years after just months after the revolution. I'm like, I don't want to go. That's crazy. And so we went. So we went, and I fell in love with Yalta. Just loved it. So I went back to the U.S. My wife had some, her relatives invited me to come back. So I did several trips without my wife. Didn't speak any Russian, by the way. Finally convinced my wife, let's go to Yalta. So we went to Yalta. She fell in love with Yalta, and she's been there when she was a little girl. So long story short, she wanted to retire in Yalta, in Crimea, in Sevastopol. So she bought some land. We're going to build our retirement home there. I said, why don't we buy an apartment? Well, that's going to take years. So we bought an apartment in Yalta. And it was wonderful. Loved Yalta. And to go to Yalta from the U.S. is not an easy thing. You've got to come to Moscow, and then the flight's not like the next 2 hours. Often you have to wait a day, sometimes 2 days to get your connecting flight to Crimea. At least how it's worked out for us. So we would often just explore Moscow for a day or two, and then I just loved Moscow. And then one of her relatives from Moldova moved to Moscow. So on our way, and we were very blessed, not like most Americans who only get 1 or 2 weeks off a year. Having my own business, I could take as much time off at this point that I wanted. So I would take like months off, 1 month, usually 3 to 6 weeks off. And slowly but surely, I was spending more and more time in Moscow than Yalta. So we bought an apartment here. And then fast forward, COVID hit, and that kind of changed everything for us for planning. And long story short, we stopped going to Yalta. It just got more difficult to get there. And so we sold Yalta and bought a farmhouse in Lipetsk. Lipetsk is 6 hours south of Moscow, a little warmer climate. So that's where my wife.
Is that Kaluga or no? That'd be below Kaluga yet, right?
I don't know where Kaluga is. It's north of.
That's kind of right below. Oh, okay. Yep. Okay.
It's north. It's on your way. It's actually on your way to Kharkov. It's the closest next big city would be Voronezh, and then Voronezh would be Rostov on the Don. Okay. And she likes it there, so we bought a house, and now all of our time has been coming here, bringing money, of course, with all that difficulty, and fixing it up. And it's about I'm not sure in hectares, in sotiks or sotiks, I think they call it. It's about 50 sotik, 2 acre, 1.5 to 2 acres. It's for a hobby farm. It's fine. Some goats and chickens. So people say, how did I end up here? I tell people at first, if I had an Italian wife, I'd probably be sitting in Milan or Rome. For me, it was just something exciting, someplace different. I really had no attraction towards Russia or anything like that. But once I started coming here, I just fell in love with it. And I wanted to spend every minute that I had here. And now I'm here 7 months out of the year minimum. I have my temporary residence permit. And I saw your struggles getting yours. And I'm like, I feel his pain, that language test, the history test. I did all of that last year. And so my goal is to get my permanent this August. And then maybe my citizenship, I'm not sure. I don't really need it. Once I get my permanent residence, I'm fine. But for you, it's not a big deal. But for me, that requirement is I have to be here 6 months plus a day minimum.
Okay.
And with my children,
every year,
I mean, they're still, every year. In a total amount of days, I have to be here 6 months plus a day. Doesn't have to be in a row. It's just in total. So I plan to be here minimum 7 months out of the year, and then spend 4 months in the U.S. And that gives me a month to travel somewhere else if I want, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm doing. And my kids, a lot of people say, I can't believe that you would not want to be around your kids. I said, okay, I was home for the holidays for 2 months. I saw my kids like 4 times. I mean, they're at that age that they all, first of all, 2 of them live in different cities, and one's at university. I don't really see them that much anyway. So my plan is to go home twice a year and spend 2 months there, and then go back again 2 months there, and try and concentrate my time with them. That's my goal.
Have they ever been here?
Yeah, we came here for spring break once for 10 days, and they love it. In fact, my son's doing a summer abroad in Europe, just short 6 weeks. He starts next week. He's going to be in Germany for 6 weeks. So I'm going to go home soon to go to my daughter's graduation, and I'll stay there for 6 weeks. And then on my way back, I'm going to go to Germany and pick up my son, and he's going to come to Russia for 6 weeks. So he's going to pal around with me for the rest of the summer before he goes back to school in August.
Cool.
So that'll be
maybe. You think ever down the road they might move here full time, or that's not something they're considering? Or?
I don't know. My oldest one might consider that. My middle one, no. She's got a significant other that probably he's one of those people that has never had his passport. Yeah, probably not. No. My son, who knows? My son's so hard to read. He doesn't know. He's a typical American boy. What do you want to do in life? I don't know. It's like, what do you want to go
Okay.
to school for? I don't know. So who knows with him? We'll see after this trip. Maybe after this trip, we'll.
Do they have concerns though about the economic welfare there, or about the woke stuff that's going on, or the LGBT, or anything else that's going on in the world? Or they're not really concerned?
No, not really. I would say my first wife is pretty liberal, so they kind of got that side from her that it's not so bad, it's fine. It's the other side that's the crazy ones. So no,
Okay.
they really don't have those concerns at all. It's not an issue. I'm not as much against that as probably. I'm very conservative. I mean, I'm pro-Trump. Even though I don't necessarily like his personal characteristics and his character, but nonetheless, I love his policies and what I think he's done and what can do for the country. But at the same time, I'm not so against the LGBTQT. I'm not for it by any means, but it's do what you want. It doesn't bother me at all. I have my
Right.
employees and all that. I don't mind. Just don't I don't want to force you to live my lifestyle. My problem is in the US, they're constantly trying to force us to live their lifestyle, and that's what I don't
Yes.
like.
Yep. Yeah, we'd be in the same boat. I don't really care. I mean, from a religious standpoint, like I always say, I believe it's wrong, and therefore I do care because somebody's soul is at stake. But for the rest, it's up to them what they do with their lives. What we don't like is when they're pushing it on our kids in the school curriculums, in the libraries, and in bathrooms, and there's just lines that we won't cross. It's that's where we're resistant to the LGBT. I don't whatever you do at home is your business. So
yeah, I'm fine with that too. That's where I stand. And the wokeness kind of drives me nuts more than anything, and not just about that, just about when it comes into the evictions and just so much of our government, the U.S. government is trying to, I don't know, take away the individual responsibilities of people and trying to, I don't know, take away their needs and supply everything for them. Kind of mentality is what I don't like. It's as an employer trying to get employees, it's so difficult to get good employees. The working mentality of today is just so different than just 5 years ago, incredibly different than 10 years ago. Just people want to work remote. Yes, they want to work remote. And during COVID, I had a couple employees that were wonderful. Most of them were not working remote. Out of an 8-hour day, they probably worked 3 hours. I mean, it's just different.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what they all want. You interview people. Can I work remote? No. Oh, I don't want to work here.
Yeah, and how do you police that? Right, it's pretty hard to know how many hours they're working. So
you can't. Now there are some fields that's good, project based. Go do this, come back. That's fine. I'll pay you X. But in my world, it's too difficult. But yeah, so thatness I like about Russia. I think the Russians still have a much harder work ethic. I don't know how long that's been here, or if it's something new. Maybe some Russians would make the same argument that I'm making. But I see people here work just harder, I think.
Interesting. So I find it it's saddening how fast it's changed. Because I back in Canada when we lived there still, the amount of people that are telling me they're looking for someone to work and nobody wants to work. And that just like, when did that happen? How fast that happened? When I was a kid, it was an embarrassment to take a welfare check to the bank. Right? Even depositing it, what we had is called GST check. Everybody gets one back. They overcharge you for some reason, and quarterly they'll give you a little check back for $60 or whatever it is. But even that one, you kind of hid it, made sure nobody saw it because it had Government of Canada written on the top. I don't want anybody thinking I'm living on Pogie. Like, there's no way. And now people are just proud of it. I haven't worked ever. I just collect government money, and they're proud of that. When did that change? I don't know.
I don't know either, but I even have problems with the way our government does it. And there's some things about Russia I like. Of course, Russia doesn't. I don't think Russia takes care of their poor population as well as they should. So it's not like I think everything here is wonderful and perfect. I don't. But I think the way that we take care of our poor in the U.S. isn't as well as it should. And in my world, I've seen it. I've seen it to where someone goes to a government based apartment complex, and the rent is based upon their income. If you don't work at all, then you get all your rent paid. If you work part-time, it just lowers how much. And if you work full-time, but you don't make a lot of money, they have their mathematical equation. They say we pay X. And I had to evict somebody, and I didn't like it. The manager didn't like it. So she didn't work at all. So she got free rent. The manager went to the hardware store, and there was the girl at the checkout counter working. And she said, well, I guess you got to come into the office and redo your work. your work certification? She's like, yes. So she came in, and so my client, she didn't come in to redo her income. So my client had to evict her because she was stealing from the government, and my client was forced to do that. If my client doesn't do that, then the government comes after my client and wants to take
Right.
all of the money back from him. So my client didn't want to, so she did. And a girl comes to court, and the judge said, what happened? We explained it, and she said, I quit. She goes, I quit my job. And it's like, why would you do that? And she said, well, I only made like $50 extra a week working this job. I worked on Fridays and Saturdays. I didn't make that much. But my rent went up almost $200 a month. She said, why would I work if there's no incentive for me to work? So she quit.
Yeah, that's totally messed up. I had a guy working for me, the same thing. His wife was on a disability, but I can't remember the exact numbers. I'm just going to make up the numbers. But if I paid him $500 a week, his wife would lose 600, that kind of a thing. And so it's like, what? How does that make any sense, right? So,
yeah, I'd rather just
the guy can never get ahead.
Yeah, I think if the government thinks you're too poor for housing, then give them housing voucher and let them work. Don't. Our government puts too much criterias on the help. And that sounds weird from a very fiscal conservative guy, but a lot of it does exactly what we talked about. It makes them just give up and just not work.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the answers are. Like, I believe every man should put food on his own table, and you shouldn't live on the government at all. Here, it seems to be very big. Oh, wait till you can get government dollars. Get government dollars. Well, I didn't come here for government dollars. I came here because land's cheap, and I think we can farm here, right? But sometimes you do need a leg up, and that's why those systems are there to help you out, right? So.
Yep. Oh, I agree. Well, we agree there for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're a little unique that way then, because you didn't come here because you're worried about the States, or you're running from anything, or you're looking for a better life. You just came because you can.
Yeah, I came, I visited, I liked it, and I want to stay here. I mean, this is where, like, when I walk into my apartment, like, I don't know why, but the energy just, I don't know, the stress, just the energy goes away, and I'm like, I'm here. And when I go back to the U.S., it's all great for about a month, and then I'm like, I'm itching to come back. I just want to go back. I don't know why.
So what's long term? You said you're going to sell everything out to a junior partner, yeah?
Yeah, several. I'm slowly making. I've already made 2 of them partners, and I've got 2 more. Slowly but surely, I just give them more and more shares of the company. So my goal is not a secret. It's open. I have a YouTube video about it. I have a 5-year plan. At the end of the 5 years, I'm hoping to turn everything over to them. But of course, I don't expect them to pay for it. I expect them to make me money during this 5-year time. So that way, at the end of the 5 years, I can say, there you guys go. I'm done. But to be honest, and if they were here to tell you, they would get angry, because I really don't do a whole lot of work. My job is to manage. If there's a problem, I get involved. Any clients, I still talk to clients all the time if there's any issues with that. But at the day-to-day operations, I don't work. I'm more of the CEO role, and just do everything that needs to be done on a decision-making basis. But I actually don't sit down and work, if that makes sense.
Okay. And so you're always going to have a foot in each door, I guess, as long as it's allowed, because your family's still there, correct?
Yeah, I think so, because obviously I don't want to just not see my children. And in fact, we've got a theory. We don't know how well this theory is going to work. I have my house is like an old house. It's not, I would say old. It's in the 70s. And it had, in the bottom floor, we ended up building a studio apartment. Our short-term goal was to put someone in the studio apartment who can help us with the farm, so my wife can make longer trips here. And then the flip is, at some point, I was hoping one of my children's would take over the land, and not like what you would expect, but to live in this house. And then my wife and I would live in a little studio apartment, so that way we always have some place to come back to, but not some place we have to take care of. That's my goal. I built a big, nice pole barn to put my car in, so that way I could lock the key and come back in 8 months and it's still there, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be here 100% of the time, at least not for a while.
Now, what if things escalate more between East and West? I mean, things have already got a lot more difficult in the last 2 years. What if there is a lot of rumors around that, things are going to get worse? Then what? You may be forced to pick sides.
Yes. Well, I hope never to pick sides, but at least if I have to pick a location, I am prepared to do that. That is why I didn't have any urgency to get my residence permit, but that made me have an urgency, because I didn't want them to stop granting visas. In the US, we're pretty lucky. We get 3-year tourist visas, which is
Right.
nice.
Yep.
But even that, I was afraid that they would not issue the next one. So I really wanted to get my residency. And now I have the same urgency. Okay, well, I want to get my permanent residency. I don't want them to take that away for any reason. So at least if that happens, now I don't have to go back. So
Right.
I have a choice. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
But
I hope not to have to make that call.
if
But
you
I
do
mean,
have to, do you have a decision? You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but obviously you're still working over there too, so you might have to be careful anyway. But if it did happen, do you have a thought in mind of where you'd rather be?
I tell people this all the time. When my mom says it, she goes, "When you coming home?" I said, "Mom, I am home." And she has a hard time with that concept. And my
Yeah.
kids already know it. My kids are like, "Okay, well, Dad, you're going to live in Russia. We'll have to come visit you someday." And I guess that's my attitude. I mean, and this is my home. I mean, I consider this my home now.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think
same here, I guess. But I am planning on staying. I'm not planning on going back for myself. But
interesting.
was there any shocks coming here? I mean, you've been doing it for years now, but things are a
Yes.
little different here than they are back home. So
Yes, I think I've seen some of your videos, and everybody kind of says the same thing. Being a typical American, we only learn English. We may learn Spanish if we have someone in our family that is, that speaks it. But even though we took it in high school, no one learns a second language. I thought learning Russian would be easier, and
okay.
I think if I was younger, and you're probably seeing this, as your children are going to pick this up 10 times faster than you. And
Yep.
their learning curve will, just all of a sudden overnight, they're going to be speaking it, and you're still going to be struggling, pronouncing some of the basic words. It's amazing how fast they learn it. So my age, I don't want to blame my age. It's me. I'm also lazy. My motto in life, by the way, is I work very hard to be this lazy. That's my motto. And because I worked really hard, and now I just want to chill. And I spend most of my time learning the language. So I would say that the language is probably the biggest shock for me. The second shock is how absolutely wonderfully nice everybody is. Just everybody. Strangers on the street are nice. Even if you could see sometimes they don't want to be bothered, they'll still help you. I mean, it's amazing.
Right.
By the way, the point of a pivot I made was last fall, that strangers were coming up to me in Moscow and asking me directions, and I could actually answer in Russian and give them good directions. It was like I
Good
finally arrived. Yeah.
Where'd you send that guy? I don't know.
Well, usually if I get afraid, I just say I don't speak Russian.
Yep.
And then I move on. But now I try.
Yeah, I memorized that one. Я не понимаю по-русски. So
yeah, that's what I told all my children when we came in for spring break. You need to learn спасибо and я не понимаю по-русски. That's it. But now I try not to say that ever. So
I said it to somebody at the gas station attendant the other day, and she kept right on the hammer. And I thought, oh, maybe I said it, flawlessly without an accent or something. Because I still have no idea what you're saying, lady. Yeah. I had parked wrong or something. I don't know.
Yeah, these gas stations all have different rules. Each one, you come in a different way, and some you pay first, some you don't. Some have attendants, some don't. For me, it's like
I find Russian people have an enormous amount of patience, and I don't. And so the guy that I was waiting for, he was taking sweet time, and there was a spot in front of him. So I went around his car, and I just parked on an angle here, and I filled up my tank. Anyway, when I got in, that's what she was telling me, that you can't do that because you're blocking access. It becomes a fire hazard, possibly, right? If people are an escape hazard, whatever you want to call it. So, okay, that makes sense. Next time I won't do that.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
Yep.
Yeah. And I actually
any regrets? You're not moved here full time, so you can't really have regrets on moving either, I suppose. So.
Well, I mean, I've invested a lot of money here. I mean, so it could be that things are not, or they're not free. They're, for American standards, it's not crazily overly priced. I think Moscow real estate is in the center is just like the U.S. It's just stupidly expensive. But no, I don't think I really have any regrets. The only regret I have, and this is the same advice I would give anybody that's interested in doing this: one, do it, but work on the language as early as you think you're going to come. Is work on that language. Don't get here and think it's just going to happen, because it's not. You'll know enough to get around, of course, but I'm a businessman. I want to do business here. My dream is to open up a cafe, a language center. I want to really get involved in the community. And in the U.S., not that I want to sound arrogant, but in the U.S., as an attorney, I'm not intimidated, but if you and I are going to do business in the US, I'm like, I'm not afraid of anything you're going to say. I'm going to understand what you're saying. I'll be able to negotiate. I'm at a good place of bargaining. Here, I'm like a child. I have no idea what these documents say. I can't read. I can read and I can read the words, but some of those words I don't understand. So I really feel inadequate when it comes to that level. So I need a lot more work before I can do that. Because my dream is to open a business and be successful at it. I don't necessarily want to make a lot of money. That's not my point at all. In fact, if it didn't profit a penny, but it paid everybody's salary and all the bills and did its function, I would be very happy, because it would kind of mean that I conquered a new project and I really contributed
accomplish something.
Yeah.
I think most of us men have a need to accomplish things and build things and construct things. And
if not, I'll just sit and drink and get fatter, and I don't want to do either one of those. So I need something to do. My wife, that's why it's good. My wife supports it too, because she knows if I like learning a language, she's like, if she knows if I'm not, because I have lessons every day, 1 to 2 hours every morning. I go to Russian clubs on the weekends, and I do a lot of things with them. And if I wasn't trying to learn Russian, I'd probably just sit here in this apartment and be by myself. And what's the point of being here if you're just going to sit in a different building in a different room? You really need to be involved. So, and the next step for me is to have a business that I'm forced to, be out there with the people. So that's what I want to do.
No, good for you. I think a lot of people don't understand that. They're saying, "Oh, just start speaking," And I see that in YouTube comments sometimes. When are you going to do the videos in Russian? I'm like, do you have any idea what you're asking? But I noticed that with meetings, you got government meetings or bank meetings or whatever, and it's that same thing. I feel like a 2-year-old. I have no idea, and I know what I want to say because I can conduct business very well in Canada, but here, I'm living on faith.
Yep. Yeah, and you're from a disadvantage of most of us. We have Russian spouses. I mean, you don't have that. So you're even at a bigger disadvantage. You're relying on a friend, of course, that you've known for 6 months. I mean, you're really opening your life. Yeah.
4 months. Yeah.
4 months. Yeah.
The lawyer I've known for a couple of years, and I've got other people that I trust that I've known for many years that are here. But as far as everyday stuff, I would be my local guy, which I've known since I got here, which is about 4 months. So, yeah.
And I have some local friends. I mean, really, really good friends that help me out. And years ago, I started coming here and just have as a business expense. I would come to international lawyers conferences. And so I would come, even though I wasn't interested in a topic at all, but it would enable my business to pay for my flights and all that stuff. So I actually have some attorney friends, some Moscow attorney friends, which is really nice. So if I have some really deep issues, they help me. And I've had some, contractor when I was remodeling had some issues. So my attorney friend took care of that for me. And, I have had the immigration police give me a stern talking. I don't want to say too much more here, but I've had some where they talked with me. And one of my attorney friends is a criminal defense attorney, and he does not necessarily immigration, but he does some pretty high level stuff. In fact, he represents an American that's in prison. And I got stopped as a school teacher. They got stopped at the airport with having prescription marijuana. Guy was a school teacher my age, and he retired from the U.S. and he was going to come teach English in Russia. And he had prescription marijuana with him, and he didn't declare it. And they caught him. And he said he wasn't trying to hide it, but he got 14 years, 7 for possession and 7 for smuggling, because he didn't declare it. Yeah, that's real. And it's
personally, I'm not a fan of medicinal marijuana. I'm not a fan of any drugs of any kind.
I can't stand it. No,
I believe they need to be tough on it. So, but that does seems really tough, I guess. But
well, I do like the fact that it's not that common in Russia yet. I hope it doesn't become common for a long. And I try to explain to my American friends, I'm like, you don't understand. If you have marijuana here, people look at it the same as heroin or cocaine. Here in Russia, it's just as bad. Drugs are really frowned upon. Of course, alcohol is a different thing. And I'm not going to lie, I do drink and probably drink a lot more. Whenever I'm Orthodox, so, we go to confession. That's like the thing I always confess. Yeah, I drink too much. I never want confession. I have to say I drink too much. But yeah, I'm the same with you though on drugs. I never.
Yeah, Canada's legalized. Started with marijuana. Now they're legalizing hard drugs up to, I forget what it is. I asked another guy who works with rehab people and stuff, and he says it was enough to get good and high for a couple of days. He figured, and that's now legal to carry, like as far as hard drugs in Canada. Yeah, so
Yeah, the
it's
U.S.
constantly getting worse, and that's not a good trend.
Well, you would think that they would look at it, making it for personal use more available, like in the U.S. You would think, okay, well, maybe the drug use would go down. Well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Of course, it's going to go
Oh
up.
yeah. Now I smell it like, well, not now here, I guess, but in Canada you smell it lots, especially in the summertime. People pull up with their car beside you, and the windows open up. All you smell is marijuana. It's gross. Yeah.
Once again,
So
what you want in your house, but I don't need to be a part of it. Yeah, my wife and I went to a concert, a very famous, what they call it, Flat Rock. So it's a very famous outdoor theater in the mountains in Colorado, and we went to a concert there, and she was just miserable. She wanted to leave. It was just so bad.
it stinks. Yeah.
Yes, it was
So,
bad. Yeah, I wish.
along with that, I think comes the crime and the homelessness and all the other stuff. In my opinion, they kind of go hand to hand with this drug culture as well. You're saying you don't see it getting necessarily worse in the States, but you'd have to admit, well, maybe you don't. I don't know. In Canada, anyway, the homelessness seems to be way up in the last 15 years. The tent cities are all over the place now. Drug use seems to be way worse again as well. All, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but a sign of a decaying culture and decaying civilization. You don't see that there, or you do?
You mean in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely see it, but I see it for different reasons. I see it for, it's like what's going on now. I don't know if you've watched the news over the last week, what's going on with all of the anti-Israel protests at all the Ivy League universities. It's like really, really bad. They've, in fact, just was it today? I don't know what school, if it was Columbia, one of the universities, they actually broke into the school and overtook a building. And
Oh, wow.
the university, not all the universities want to stop them. Like, we'll just
these are pro-Hamas people or pro-Palestine people?
Yes.
Okay.
And forget the politics of it, whether you support them or not. It's just the fact that they're doing lawlessness and no one seems to be bothered by it is what I don't like. So I think that our government is allowing the actions of others and using it to their political benefit. My whole theory has been this way. My dad taught me this. He said, the government wants the people to be poor. The government wants them to be on the streets because if they had everything they needed, they wouldn't need the government. So the government wants them to be dependent on them. So the government will put, well, when you go to, I went to New Orleans with my children for Christmas one year, and it was tent city underneath the bridges, and all the tents were government issued tents. It's like, I just don't understand that. And Colorado was the same. Colorado had government issued tents everywhere. And I went to California. My dad's from California, and we went out to California, and my kid said, let's go to Hollywood. My aunt's like, don't go to Hollywood. I'm like, no, this was several years ago. She's like, don't go to Hollywood. So okay, we'll go. We went. There were drug needles, used condoms on the sidewalk. It was the most nastiest place I've ever been. Yep. And my kids are like, I never want to come back to California. And I said, well,
we found that in California, period. Northern California was nice. We were surprised, and it was very void of people. And the people we talked to actually seemed kind of conservative. But the farther south you went, the worse it got, and the more disgusting it looked. Ditches full of garbage, and that was this past summer we drove through there.
Did you really?
Yeah. We toured the States for about 3 months in a motorhome. Covered 26 states, I think. Yeah.
Which one was your favorite?
Oh, I don't know. Montana, I really liked. Missouri, I could have moved to right away. I really liked it there too. California, actually, I was surprised how much I liked Northern. Just the beauty, the vibrant colors, the grasses, and it was just stunning.
I think California is probably one of the most beautiful states. And I think California, as far as weather and sporting activities, probably has the most to offer than anywhere. You can go snow skiing, and in 4 hours you can go to the ocean. I mean, it's got the most to offer. However,
and even picking peaches straight off the tree and biting into that, I was like, oh man, nothing beat that. So yeah, we had a good time. There's a lot of good places. But.
Yeah, we can't have peaches or lemons in Indiana. The weather's just not fruitful for that.
Not warm enough.
Yeah, exactly. No, I just see the government isn't going to the direction that it needs to go. I think the government is getting involved everywhere that it possibly can, and I think it's doing it for corrupt and personal power. They need to be important. It's not like it used to be. Take care of yourself and help those that are in need. And I don't think, and I'm all for. I'm a little different. I mean, I'm very fiscally conservative, but I think my social issues, and maybe because I'm an evil eviction attorney, maybe I see it, that I do see people who truly need it. I see that there's a role for the government. I just don't think the government does it properly, and they have let their own greed get involved. Like, for example, the way our government was set up was wonderful. Our government was designed for someone like you. Actually, it was designed for the farmer to come in on the state level, our state people. It was designed for our state senators to come in for a couple months out of the year, usually during the off season, to be a state senator or to be a state congressperson. And then we go back home and be the farmers or do whatever they want. Now it's, of course, a full-time business. And on the U.S. level, I don't know the statistic of it, but you could look at every single senator or congressman's income and what it is when they started being a political person and what it is after they became a political person and how their income got so high. It's just
their net worth. Yeah,
it's insane. It's a level that most Americans will never obtain, and they didn't go in rich, but they certainly came out very rich. So
yeah, we see that in Canada as well. I've seen the numbers done on Nancy Pelosi, and that one sure don't add up. So
no, her husband's got some involvement in that. But yeah, so I would say I don't like the direction our country is going. I don't think that I've given up faith as much as maybe others. I do hope the pendulum will come back. My faith is why people say, I don't know how you can stand Trump, all of this. I'm like, well, the number one reason I voted for Trump, and sorry, my liberal friends, the reason I will vote for him again is for the Supreme Court justices. They're, my legal brain of me, I understand where things are decided. And if we can keep that Supreme Court to be what it is now, at least for a little while longer, we can keep some of that stuff at bay. But
fair enough. Now, in contrast, you've been here quite a few years now, going back to 2014. You personally, I have not seen homelessness here yet. I have never seen tent cities. I've never seen drug addicts and drunks walking down the side of the road. I've only been here 4 months and basically only in this city. I'm sure some of that exists, but what's your impressions? Have you seen a lot of that compared to what you see back home?
Oh, compared to what I see back home, no comparison. But well, in my cities where I live, we don't see a lot of that at all.
No, I would not in Indiana, but I mean, as a global, I guess, as a whole.
Oh, of course, but Russia's a little different. A lot of people, I would say, there's not any homeless. Their home may not be very nice, and it may be very small, and it may be uninhabitable, but nonetheless, they usually have a home. Now, there's some immigrants that have some issues with homes, but as far as true Russians being homeless, no, I don't think homelessness is a problem. I do think alcoholism is still a prevalent problem in Russia, and I'm in a suburb on the north side of Moscow, and I'm not gonna lie, I can go to the Electrichka station and I will see some drunk people. Not every day, but probably once or twice a week. And then there's one place in Moscow that it's kind of a hangout of drunk people. So if you go there on a regular basis, you're going to see a couple. But nonetheless, they're not living there. They're just hanging. They're usually not working. They're usually on pension. They're a little older, but it's not a problem, I guess I could say.
Okay. And drugs?
No, I don't know. Well, it's good that I don't know because I'm not a part of that. I don't see or know of any drugs here at all. Doesn't mean it doesn't.
Well, I know very little about drugs, but it's become so visible in Canada now that you see it on a regular. You see, buildings with black lights so they can't shoot up. You got bathrooms that never used to be locked are now locked. You see drug needle boxes all over the place. You see the needles on the ground. You see people wandering around just twitching out of their minds. Yeah.
No, nothing like Pennsylvania like they have there. No, nothing like that here. I'm sure there's an underbelly here that has that issue, but I don't know it. I don't see it. I'm out pretty late sometimes with some of my clubs, and we go out to dinner and stuff afterwards. So there's been several times that I come back to my apartment at 1 or 2 in the morning. I never go to the clubs. When I say clubs, I mean speaking clubs, organizations. I don't mean
the language club.
Yeah, I don't go to the bars and stuff like that. Even in the U.S., it's not my thing. So I'm sure you can find some clubs and bars in Moscow that you can probably find drugs. But on the most part, it's not a common occurrence here whatsoever compared to the U.S. Not at all.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking here as well. It's quite a contrast. But then again, when I was a kid in the 90s, you didn't see it much either. There might have been some guys doing some marijuana or something, but the hard drugs was almost unheard of. And
Yep.
I mean, we had our share of drunk people once in a while too, but again, same thing. It was just an isolated thing. It's not, homelessness too. I never seen a homeless guy till I was, I think I was 18 or something. We took a trip to Toronto one time, and I was just shocked. This guy's sleeping on the sidewalk, and we're driving 60 kilometers an hour past him, right? So,
My wife talks about that a lot. She says, the way the U.S. approaches mental illness is just wrong, because the U.S. has, if they're not harmful to themselves or harmful to others, then leave them alone. You don't help them unless they come to you for help. And in Russia, it's not quite like that. I mean, if you're out drunk, even if you're not hurting somebody, they're not going to leave you alone. They're eventually going to take you in somewhere. Usually, and I've seen this. It's like, go away, go home. If you're here when I come back, you're coming with me. And that's usually what they do. They don't let you just, be drunk all night. Or like in the U.S. home, definitely, if you're sleeping out somewhere, the police are going to take you in. They're not going to let you sleep on that park bench all night. They're going to bring, here. And what they do with them, I don't know. I don't know if there's resources. I don't know if they put them in mental institutions or drug rehabs. I have no idea what they do with them, but they definitely remove them from the public here. And my wife says,
I know here locally, some people that I know that are involved in rehab centers. And so they, I don't know, there must be, I'm just guessing top of my head, 20 or 30 people, male and female, that they're helping right now with their addictions. So there is a lot more support here than I would have been aware of back home. But
and it's not a business.
I'm sure we have it here too.
And that's the other thing is the U.S. Even the rehabs are all businesses. There's too much business aspect from everything in the U.S., which just brings in corruption.
Yep, fair enough. Interesting. It's very interesting. Different perspectives. What do you think long term? Where do you think Russia's going? I ask everybody this one at the end here, but where do you think Russia will be in 5-10 years?
So I think long term, their problem is going to be more economical and geographical, dealing with just the population influx. But their growth rate is more than the U.S. Their economy is growing at a faster rate than the U.S. I think the U.S. was less than 2%, less than that, and I think Russia was steadily between 2 to 3, and every year.
Somebody told me it was 7 last quarter.
That's crazy. Just with all the sanctions they have figured out. My wife says she likes the sanctions. It forced Russia to look within and do better. Is how she.
I think it's 100% a good thing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you look at what Trump was trying to do, right, it was protectionism to grow the economy, because he keeps shipping those jobs off overseas. It doesn't help at home. And everybody yelled at him for it. But now Russia's got the exact same thing going accidentally because of the sanctions. They're forced to build within. And that's the greatest thing for the country. Now we can get into an export mode. We can start shipping out, right, instead of buying in.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what my wife
As far as
said.
the demographics, I'm going to touch on that one for a minute, because somebody just told me recently there's a lot of government programs to encourage people to move back to the countryside. I don't know that personally, but apparently a lot of people have taken that. There's like low interest loans or something like that, encouraging people to move back out to the villages.
Well, because they recognize the problem, but they still have that problem in Moscow. Moscow, the going interest rate right now is between 12 and 15% for a mortgage, unless you want a new building. A new building, it's like 4 to 5%. So it's still enough that it's encouraging people to come to Moscow or St. Petersburg. But yes, what you're talking about is important, because it's already a problem. Because the average wage in Russia is like $500 or $600 US a month, but in Moscow it's more like closer to $2,000 a month. I mean, it's a big disparity from the outside.
But the cost of living is a lot higher in Moscow as well, no?
It is, but that's why a lot of people live an hour to 2 hours
outside traveling
and commute. I mean, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to get ahead, I guess so.
Yep, that's what they do.
It's the demographic problem. That's an interesting one as well, because the globalists are constantly screaming that there's too many people on the planet, and yet every country right now is slowly becoming aware of a demographic issue. They're running out of people. There's not enough workers left, and we have this huge, like, a healthy population, in my opinion, should be a triangle like this, with a few old people supported by a large working class. But we're inverted now. We have this huge chunk of old people supported by only a few workers, and that's not healthy for any society. And it doesn't really matter where you go. There's a few countries like Nigeria, I think, has eight children, or was it 5? I can't remember. But they have a pretty good birth rate over there. But the Western world, for sure, it's decimated. A few more years, and there's not going to be enough people around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most kids wait so long to get married, so long to have kids, and Russia isn't quite what it used to be. They don't get married as young as they used to, and they don't have as many kids as they used to. Same problem.
Yeah.
So those are
Yeah.
the same.
So
Those
that's
are the
not
things that
unique,
I
I
think
guess.
Russia. No, and those are the things I think Russia's going to face. So nothing too terrible, I don't think. I think that they have enough land, they can produce enough food. I think they have the capability to keep it going. So I don't long term. I don't see any issues in Russia.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'd love to chat with you some more sometime because we haven't even covered your military career. You got 12
No,
years in the reserves or something you said too, wasn't it? Was it reserves or
yeah. Well, reserve. There's two reserves. There's the federal reserves and then the state National Guard, but they're both
okay.
considered reserve forces. But yeah, I did that for 12 years. That's interesting. Yeah.
That's another
And
whole ball game. So maybe we'll do this again. We'll see how well this one goes. And for any viewers watching right now, drop your comments down below if you got more questions for Dan. You mentioned something early on about a YouTube channel as well. Is that something you want to promote? Or
I do. I created it really just for my friends and family. Like, what do you do over there? So, well, watch my videos. I've got like 50 videos, maybe 200 subscribers. It's not the last thing I want to do is sit and have to work at it. But I would like to grow it just so people could, more people to see what's going on around the world. It's Daniel Sandlin Travels.
okay, I'll see if my wife can remember to put it down below. Oh, Daniel Santa. So just how they see it on the screen here, but no space, and then travels behind it. Correct?
That's correct. Should pop up. Yep.
Okay, good. So go check him out. Give him a subscribe and a thumbs up as well. And yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you.